George Miller, welcome back to TCM. I'm so happy to have another Aussie on this channel.
Yes. Oh, this is great. Yeah.
And your latest film is Furiosa, which stars Anya Taylor-Joy. Can you tell me about working with her? What impressed you the most?
I was looking for someone. I had no idea who to cast initially. And then Edgar Wright showed me an early cut of Last Night in Soho, where I saw Anya for the first time. I'd seen her in trailers of her earlier movies, and she was very striking in that. And I remember I turned to Edgar and I said, at one point, and I said, she'd be great for, and before I finished the sentence, she said, do it, do it, do it. He said, she's great. And it proved to be right. I mean, there's something timeless about her, but most of all, there's this resolute, fierce quality. She's very rigorous, very disciplined, and she was a ballet dancer just like Charlize from a very early age. So that discipline becomes almost intrinsic to them. She grew up in a big family, the youngest of many siblings, and was riding motorbikes when she was very young. When she came to work on the film, she had no driver's license, but she had to do a lot of driving, including some stunts, effectively. And she really was able to handle it extremely well. And in terms of, what's inside and what emerges in this extreme world, there's somebody who could fit into that world, and she brought that big time.
I'm Furiosa!
The darkest of angels.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. So your next pick for us on TCM tonight is Seven Samurai, directed by Akira Kurosawa from 1956. Akira Kurosawa, of course, a legendary director. He was someone that was very inspired by Western directors like John Ford. What inspires you about his filmmaking?
Well, I guess his ability to tell stories that are on the one hand epic and on the other hand very intimate. Those two contradictions happening at the same time. Clearly his camera and his work and his staging of the films, and basically the almost mythological level or currents underneath the story. When I made the first Mad Max, it was released in Japan. It suddenly became a big hit there. And when I went there, they said to me, "Oh, you must have seen a lot of Kurosawa movies." And to my shame, I said, "Who's Kurosawa?" I mean, I actually said that. And they were very polite. But and then I discovered who he was. He synthesized Asian cinema and basically Western cinema, and particularly Hollywood cinema, and found it almost his own genre. And that was the amazing thing about Kurosawa.
Yeah, and I imagine Mad Max 2 also, which is sort of like the Raiders coming to the village and, Mad Max helping them out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I love doing this because it's like going to film school with you here. This is great. Well, I remember when we were writing Mad Max 2, it had a lot akin to Yojimbo, which I know Yojimbo, I think Sergio Leone had based one of his spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood on Yojimbo. But there are many Kurosawa movies since then I've watched, even more intimate family dramas and so on, that you realize this was a true master and very significant. And that's the great thing about this cinema, this universal language, which is about 120 years old, that we kind of learn before we can read, whatever our own language is. And as time goes on, and there is an evolution of the culture, the global culture, we're speed reading films now.
Yeah.
We're shorthanding with films. It's a wonderful thing to observe, and to the extent that I am be part of, it's really great.
Well, George Miller, thank you again for joining us on TCM.
Thanks, Alicia. Thank you.
And let's take a look at this film. Here it is, directed by Akira Kurosawa from 1956, Seven Samurai. Well, that was Seven Samurai, and I'm joined again by Dr. George Miller, filmmaker extraordinaire and fellow Aussie. And I'm excited to talk to you about this film because I know you love action, and it's got a lot of great action sequences. And it really does show you that action is the universal language, isn't it? You don't need subtitles to read it. Everyone can enjoy it in the same way.
For me, action is the fundamental language of cinema. I was very influenced when I first became curious about film by a book by British scholar critic Kevin Brownlow, The Parade's Gone By, who basically was saying that the essential defining of the film language happened in the silent era, the parade's gone by. When sound came along, for a while there, cinema became very static. The sound equipment basically locked everything in, and cinema lost, or film language, or the cameras lost their agility. Kevin Brownlow sort of pointed out that everything, in the close-up, the wide shot, the moving camera, all of those happened in the silent era. Apparently, when people first saw a close-up and someone turning their head in the early days of cinema, they saw that as a disembodied head and screamed. So it's a learned language. And when I started making films, I thought that syntax of the action film was really the pure language of cinema. You could only do it in cinema. You couldn't do it in theatre. You couldn't do it anywhere else. So that's one of the things that drove the first Mad Max.
Something that interests me about you as a filmmaker is that, like Akira Kurosawa, you enjoy practical sets and practical effects. Kurosawa said he liked to make all the sets as authentic as possible to help his actors get in the mode, particularly for a period film. But you also love to try technology. You love to play with new technology.
Yes, two things drive my filmmaking. One is story, by far the most important thing. Not only how to tell stories, but trying to understand why we tell stories. The other thing is the tools of filmmaking, the evolving technology. I mean, I started working in the celluloid era. One of the things that drove Fury Road and now Furiosa is that you can do so much more with digital filmmaking, mainly on safety, for instance. Every actor, every stuntman has cables on them if they're doing anything, so the level of safety is increased enormously. So if you look at films like Bullet, made about 1968, you can see the skid marks on the ground, and the number of skid marks tells you how many takes they did. And you can see that in a lot of car action movies. And nowadays we can erase them.
I like that it still excites you after all these years. George Miller, thank you so much again for being with me on TCM tonight.
Thanks, Alicia. Thank you.
And we have one more film to talk about after this break. It is a powerful war film from 1966, so don't go anywhere.